Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of This Week in Destiny Rising. My name is Sax. I'm a Destiny 2 Sherpa and content creator who's fallen in love with Destiny Rising, but at times I felt underinformed when it came to the various gacha mechanics and character building within the Rising universe. That's why I started this show, so I could chat with some of the top players in the game and discuss the things that confuse or simply evaded me, in hopes that myself and others like you may learn something new every single week. This week, I'm going on a solo mission to discuss week 1 of Season of the Moor, my love for Maru, and the weapon god rolls that I'm chasing for all the new Gauntlet Blitz weapons. But before we get into that, I need to share with you guys that this will be the final episode of Season 1 of the show. To be honest, when I started the show, I actually had no intention on doing a weekly podcast, and by chance and love of the game, it's brought me back week over week to discuss and deep dive on the most confusing parts of the game, so I could learn them and you guys could benefit directly from those conversations. At this moment in time, we've reached a point in the game's life cycle where NetEase is working to bring us more content in the new year, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't difficult to find things to get excited about, to interest and delight you guys week over week. That alone has always been my goal, and with the time between now and the planned major releases in the new year, I hope that we can all enjoy the things in life that bring us the most joy, rejuvenate us, and ultimately bring us closer to our friends and family. Though I do intend to step away from the weekly cadence of covering Destiny Rising that hosting this podcast has necessitated, I do plan to continue to play the game and live stream / publish standalone videos when I feel that I have something of value to add to the discussion. During this break, I'm going to be enjoying time with my family as the holidays quickly approach. I'll be traveling with my wife, and we'll be preparing our home to welcome the birth of our first daughter early next year. I look forward to seeing all the goodness that NetEase cooks up for us in the new year. And if you would like to stay connected with me in-game, you are more than welcome to add me and join my Discord server using the information displayed on screen. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the discussion for today. So this week in Destiny Rising, we saw Season of the Moor launch in full, and we received Maru with that. So Maru has come in. She is a space pirate, double grenade launcher wielding, with a brand new exotic light grenade launcher in the primary slot, Dvergar's Drill, which is an absolutely insane weapon. If you are not using this, if you are not boosting this up, this is something that you definitely want to keep your eye on. I would say even if you're not building into Maru, I think it would be worth getting this weapon just to have it as a meta option down the line, because some of the things it does is so unique. We'll talk about that here shortly. Let's talk more about what we're getting into with the season that release. So Season of the Moor runs from November 6th all the way to the 1st of the year, 2026. So we're going to be in here for a little under 2 months, actually, a little bit of a shorter season here. However, you see for this front half of the season, we're going to have Void and Arc Shield, specifically when it comes to the Expanse, Calamity Ops, GMs, things of that sort. We're going to be leaning towards the Arc in the Void side of things. We also here have Maru's character story here. We did not receive a 4-star this round. We only received the 5-star in Maru, and man, she is so much fun to play. So I know there was a lot of conversation on whether or not people were going to build into Maru, or whether they found her valuable or even worth the conversation piece on having it. And I think she has shut that down completely. I think that we have turned the corner, and people really feel strongly that though she may not have overtaken the meta completely from characters like Hellhest and Ning, just because they're so good at what they do, and with the Arc Shield leaning that we still have in the front half, they are still very, very relevant characters. She is so much fun to play. She fills a very different gap in the play style that we didn't have in the game. You know, we had spread characters, but they played very differently. Ikora didn't have any auto-loading options in the first season and the opening of the game. And so with that, sometimes it felt clunky, right? I felt like I always had to be jumping in the air to auto reload, so I'm not getting hit by stuff and dodging and doing all this. Whereas with Maru, the whole point of the game is to get into the action. And why I love playing Maru so much is this combination of abilities that you're chaining so that you can enhance. So let's talk about it here. Relic abilities for Maru. Start here with the super, okay? So the super is known as Blight Volley. It says Maru enters her super state and rapidly fires explosive energy projectiles from the collapsing cannon. Resonance enhances the firing performance and damage of the collapsing cannon in real time. So here is what it looks like when you cast your super on Maru. So man, I want to make a few notes about this relic ability here, this super ability that you have on Maru. This is not something that auto fires. This is something that you cast, bring up the collapsing cannon, and then as you're moving throughout the battlefield, you have to intentionally fire this cannon. The reason I call that out is it would have been very easy for NetEase to take the approach and essentially make it auto fire, where you basically, if you cast your super, you're using it wherever you are. However, with Maru, I have found that it's very effective when you walk onto the battlefield. You can direct this and you can take care of multiple areas in the activity that you're doing. Now, this might not be as effective or as necessary in something like maybe the Expanse, or say, if you're just in like a Singularity Chaos, but for something when it comes down to maybe a Shifting Gates, I could see it being beneficial in PvP. I could see it being very beneficial in things like GM's Calamity Ops, where you want to make sure that you're not just spraying all this, wasting it. There's not a ton of shots in there, but it is very, very effective. So let's talk about some of these other abilities. So the first one we have is Annihilation Blast. This says shoots a cannonball that deals damage and inflicts suppression, which reduces combatants' damage dealt and knockback. So resonance significantly impacts the cannonball's damage. The explosion creates 3 smaller shells when at 50% resonance or higher. And then let's go down to the bottom here. We have Abyss, or let's actually show that off here, what this looks like. So you basically take out it looks like a less juiced up version of your collapsing cannon, and then you have this area of effect where you can drop a cannonball that's going to do exactly what it says. It's going to suppress and knock back. So next we have Abyss Engulf. It says a vortex barrier forms at the collapsing cannon's muzzle, converting engulfed bullets and blast damage into an overshield. Resonance affects the overshield's duration in real time. When resonance reaches 50% or more, the barrier provides a larger protection range. So guys, look at this here. When you cast this, you have your collapsing cannon out, and then as you're taking more damage with the cannon, you are actually enhancing yourself. You're enhancing yourself by getting a greater overshield, and then that barrier provides a larger protection range. When you take more damage, you are able to protect yourself even more. So it's this kind of interesting thing. So we've talked about resonance a lot. Let's talk about what that actually is. So we have the passive Collapse here. It says dealing or absorbing damage with abilities provides resonance, with the collapsing cannon enhancing all of Maru's abilities. Losing health or shield will result in the loss of resonance, and the higher Maru's resonance is, the more she will lose. So basically, resonance is your bar that is split into 2 above your health at the bottom of your screen. So guys, when you get that above that 50% mark, you've seen throughout the different relic abilities, they have varying degrees of benefits that you get from that. So let's look some of the weapon mastery here. Level 1 says when resonance is at 50% or higher, weapon shots will produce 3 split shells, each dealing 360 void damage to combatants within a 4-meter radius. Level 2 increases the base damage of those split shells by 30%. Level 3 increases it by an additional 60%. Level 4, split shells damage increases by 8% each time they hit the same target consecutively within 1.5 seconds, increasing by up to 24%. So that tells me if you're doing damage to a large boss, that would be within that 4-meter range. That's going to increase as those shells split off. Then finally, level 5 increases the base damage of split shells by 100%. Added benefit to your weapons, giving that additional void damage. And so you're seeing these void damage modifiers here. That's going to lean into what we're looking at for the artifact. So we'll talk about that here in just a few. Next, we're going to talk about Relic Trait 1, Energy Reserves. The vortex barrier generated by Abyss Engulf will recharge Annihilation Blast when it absorbs damage. So guys, you are using Abyss Engulf here. You're tanking damage, and you really want to tank damage to get your Annihilation Blast back so that you can deal knockback and suppression, push those enemies back and kind of have this ability to chain these together. So you're trying to get into the mix of battle. As you get into the mix of battle, you're throwing up your shield, tanking that damage, and then that is going to allow you to just keep the engine flowing, so to speak. Relic Trait 2 says harmonic transition using Abyss Engulf doesn't interrupt reloading. Reloading is still possible while the barrier is active. So let's say you start reloading your weapon, you throw up your Abyss Engulf shield to block more damage. That reloading is still happening in the background. So it reminds me quite a bit of what Estella received when they're allowing abilities to not completely override the weapon sandbox, meaning the things you can do with your weapons, the steps you're taking to engage with the weapon side of the sandbox. They don't want the abilities to necessarily overtake that. That, again, I talk about this a lot. They have different levers that can be pulled or can be tweaked and adjusted. This is something where for some characters, if they say, hey, this is too strong, we are not going to let them reload while they use an ability or fire while they use an ability. These are things, it's another lever that they're using and tweaking, right? How they can tweak the meta, the sandbox, how characters feel to play, make them feel better, or maybe bring them down just a little bit if they're overtuned. And finally, Relic Trait 3, it's called Final Wish. Defeating targets with Blight Volley replenishes up to 50% super energy, depending on the target. Base combatants give you 10%, elite combatants give you 20%, and powerful and stronger combatants give you 30%. So guys, you really want to fire Blight Volley when you think you're going to get a kill. So what that tells me is you would want to maybe weaken some of these larger enemies. You could, if you had a large enemy in a group of smaller enemies, what I would do is I would take out my super. I would bring Blight Volley out when I've dealt some damage to that large enemy in the middle, and then make sure you clean up the battlefield, because an example like this video that's on screen right now, I mean, you're getting a significant amount of super regeneration based on how many kills you're getting. So now let's talk about artifacts for Maru. And be mindful, I do not have the best artifact set by any means, because I have been farming and using my pinnacle energy for the heavy grenade launcher I use on Maru, which we'll talk about here in just a few. However, now that I got my god roll of that weapon, I can now focus in on some of these artifacts here. But with the new season, we've received what's known as the Blazar set. So these are artifacts that were brought in specifically for Maru. They can be used on other characters, but I've heard a lot of people talk about really, really liking this Blazar set on Maru. So let's talk about it. In the first slot, we have Undaunted Blazar, which says gaining an overshield also grants 25% damage resistance for 2 seconds. Remember, you get an overshield when you use that siphon ability. When you use your Abyss Engulf ability, as you take damage there, that will turn that into an overshield. So that's going to give you the ability to get even more damage resistance for 2 seconds, and then repeatedly gaining this effect extends the buff's duration to a max of 10 seconds. So you can, if you're tanking a lot of damage, this can provide you that up to 10 seconds of 25% damage resistance. For the second slot, I do not have this here. However, we can look at Siphoning Blazar here and see what it says here. Siphoning Blazar says when the wielder has an overshield dealing AoE damage to combatants, grants overshield equal to 9.1% of the initial damage dealt. And so, I've not seen this in action, but I know that people have been leaning into the Blazar set. Third slot, we have Safeguarding Blazar, which says increases the base max overshield by 10.5%. Additionally, abilities deal 14% damage while protected by an overshield. So remember, as you're going into activities, you're holding up this shield, you're tanking damage. As you tank damage, that is going to give you your Collapsing Cannon's volley, right? Not the super, just the one-off shot, your top relic ability. And then while you do that, you have an overshield, you're going to get an additional 14% damage. And finally, we have the Bellicose Blazar, which is AoE damage is increased by 8.75%. Additionally, dealing AoE damage increases the wielder's movement speed by 15% for 3 seconds. So AoE damage refers to damage that can hit multiple targets at the same time from sources including spread weapons and AoE abilities. This does not include direct damage such as contact damage from melee weapons and abilities. So when we're looking at how to build Maru, we need to think and take a mental picture of what our intentions are with the character. I think that the character plays best when you're up in the mix of battle, when you have a lot of incoming damage that you can tank, when you have obviously spread enemies that can be taken out quickly by your, this brand new Divergar's Drill primary. A couple shots from that can take out Shinkas in high level content, or if you want to quickly take out your brand new auto loading holster grenade launcher, which we'll talk about here in a few, you can take those out. But again, to use those weapons, you're going to want to be up in the mix of battle. And so Maru providing the ability for you to whip your shield out here, tank damage with Abyss Engulf, chain that into some of these Annihilation Blast suppressing shots that go in here, can knock back these heavier enemies, take out a lot of lower level enemies, and they just get better with the talent. And then when you get in there, you deal heavy damage to the large bosses. You can use your Blight Volley to shred them down and really just kind of take them out, and all while you're in the mix of the battle. And so what you'll see is you quickly have a base level of the shield for Abyss Engulf come back after you use it to its full extent. So you hold up the shield, you'll use it for a little while, and then when you put it away, you'll see that very quickly a tiny bit of shield will come back, allowing you to kind of like pop it back up. I found that to be beneficial, especially if you're in a really hairy situation where you can pop the shield up, tank that little bit of damage, and you might get your Annihilation Blast back where you can send that out again and then block. And then if you can go longer without putting that shield up, the tiny shield up, so as I like to call it, you can then get a much longer extent for the Abyss Engulf, get your overshield back. The times that I have died primarily using Maru is almost always when I go kind of turn my brain off. I kind of go into this meta of just spamming Divergar's Drill because it's so dang fun to use. And anytime I go and I just turn my brain off and I stop using the abilities, that's when I find myself overextended. That's when I find myself without cover. That's when I find myself without an overshield, because a lot of this set with Maru has to do with having an overshield. So let's say you're like me and you don't have the Blazar set. Here are some of the things that I've found that have worked really well for me, and some of the things I've even heard other people talk about using, and some actual functionality with Maru that I don't think is supposed to work right now, but it is, so maybe you could take advantage of it. In this first slot, again, I do have the Blazar set here. However, you could go in here and basically you want to look at any of these mods that actually have indication on using summons, because when you bring your shield up, that is currently activating as a summon for for these mods that you have. So let's say you already have, for some reason, you already are holding on to some of these summon mods for these various slots. If you say, oh, well, that's a high mod that I have, or maybe it has really good substats, you can use them right now, but use them at your own risk. The first two slots, I think, are really going to lean on the Blazar set. However, when we get into the third, there's a few that really stand out above the rest. So currently for me, one that I already had that was pretty high was Courageous Planetesimal. I found that was, casting abilities. We're casting abilities all the time. Giving that 18% damage bonus for 10 seconds has been really, really good. The next thing that I've seen and heard people talk about is using, again, because of the summons, we have Rampaging Pact here. So granting the wielder 33% damage bonus for up to 6 seconds upon taking the field. So when you cast your Abyss Engulf shield at the front of your muzzle of your collapsing cannon, you are able to benefit directly from this. And finally, in the last slot, the Blazar set, that is the primary. However, I found that when I built out Gwen, I already had a pretty good resonating transit here that had Void Boost, Super Boost, Ability Boost, Signature Boost. I was juiced across the board here, and the double Void, use case, right, for the weapons that we have, this is a great option. If you already have this built out, this is something you could take in with Maru and get yourself at a great spot. So I think the resounding feeling on Maru right now is that you should use the Blazar set across the way, but there are some little key functionality pieces that you don't want to ignore when it comes to playing Maru and using this. So now let's go ahead and talk about what we're using from a weapon standpoint on Maru. Now, I've already spoken very highly about the exotic light grenade launcher, Dvergar's Drill, but now let's talk about the heavy grenade launcher, which is also void and comes from Gauntlet Blitz, the assembly plant level. So you get in there. If you spin Pinnacle right now, there are 2 weapons that drop with 100% drop chance if you spin Pinnacle. You also, and this is something I don't love that they did with this season, you also can spend up to, but no more than 20 specific engrams. So you take your mythic engram parts, you put them together, you can create 20 engrams that you can focus, but only 20 for these particular weapons. So the brand new Gauntlet Blitz for Season 2, those brand new weapons, you can only do up to 20. So I don't know if that's going to be something they do over time where it says, hey, for this season, we're slowing you down on how fast you can get them so you don't burn out immediately. There's been a lot of negative feedback on that. So we'll see if they hold to it. But right now, there are a few acquisition methods. You always have about a 33.3% chance. I think in game it shows up as a 34% chance. But go into these different levels and you'll be able to get access to the weapons by farming them, completing the levels, and then you're going to look at the traits and perks. So let's start with the grenade launcher here, Sereno Buse, which you'll be able to get some really spicy rolls of. So looking here, we have Conjugation, Solidarity, and Auto-Loading Holster in the first slot here. In perk number 2, we have Eager Aspirant, Reincarnation, and Polyploidy. Guys, by far, you want Auto-Loading Holster in the first column. No doubt, bar none, get Auto-Loading Holster. I'm even of the opinion that you take Auto-Loading Holster and a purple mod before you take 2 mythics of a different type. If you're playing on Maru, you want this weapon to auto-load while you swap to other weapons. So swap to your weapon, swap to your abilities, do that kind of stuff. You want this weapon to auto-load in your backpack, on your back, on your waist, whatever you want to say, while you're doing damage with other stuff. And then Polyploidy here says, Projectile Blast always deal plus 75% blast damage when 1 target's hit and 30% blast damage when 2 or more targets are hit. The perk upgrade is the blast damage is increased to 120% when only 1 target is hit. So guys, if you're doing boss damage, like single target boss damage, you want auto-loading Polyploidy full stop here. Now, if you say, well, Zax, I don't have that here. Looking at some of these, I personally do not like, there are enough damage dealing perks and damage benefiting perks in the game that do not require things of other people, other guardians in your party, or maybe even you getting kills ahead of time. I'm always going to take something that's a flat, always on perk. This is just me, but always on perk rather than depending on other characters to do things, other people to do things in my team. So I'm going to just bypass Solidarity. Conjugation. This weapon deals 20% damage or plus 20% damage when it is equipped to a character of the same element. Obviously, that's always going to be on. That's a flat buff. So I'm going auto-loading holster first, conjugation second, and then finally Solidarity. For the second column here, I'm looking at this thing. Reincarnation is going to be my third option, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Or we'll talk about our second option here in just a second. But Reincarnation will be my third option because, again, even though you can get a very high damage bonus, up to 75% damage bonus, you need to get a kill. You need to get multiple kills with the weapon to generate that. You're using your heavy ammo. You're using a finite resource to get this buff, whereas the other time, it's always on. Even with conjugation, it's always on. So I would take auto-loading holster for the functionality use first, conjugation second, and then if I have to, Solidarity. And realistically, I'm only taking Solidarity just because it's going to allow me to put an exotic mod on there. If that's the only thing you could ever get, which I'm not convinced that's the case, but you know, I digress. So let's talk perk 2, Eager Aspirant. Do not sleep on Eager Aspirant, okay? So Eager Aspirant says this weapon gains plus 40% damage when not firing, lasting up to 10 seconds. Upon firing, this damage bonus will gradually deplete until it reaches 0. The reason I say don't sleep on this, think about the synergy that this provides with auto-loading holster. If you're going to put the weapon away and you're going to passively gain that damage bonus when you don't fire it, you don't have to have it out to get it. If you put it away, by definition, you are actively not firing it. You're going to get that damage bonus and then you can take it out. So if you get Polyploidy, auto-loading holster, you're done. If you get auto-loading holster, Eager Aspirant, that is dealer's choice. If you have both of them, you play around with them. You see what plays more with your play style, how you want to go with it. If you're like me, you might be someone who does not, you know, I don't take out my heavy weapon, especially on Maru. I don't take out the heavy weapon nearly as much as I thought I would. I'm spamming the drill all over the place. So guys, that is enough about this grenade launcher. Auto-loading Polyploidy, go get it. Auto-loading Eager Aspirant, don't be mad about it. Anything else, you're still on the hunt. So let's talk about some of the other weapons that have been added to the game. And some of these I'm not that familiar with as we're going in here, but let's look at the Solar Shotgun Thermopylae 80. This is a new one that comes from Gauntlet Blitz as well. I'm not even actually sure what map it's from, but I've gotten one before because I ran all of them here. We have Conjugation, Fraternity, and then Spinosaurus Shots. I've heard Spinosaurus Shots is good. I just had someone in my Twitch chat the other night tell me that. Let's look at it. The 13 pellets of the shotgun are replaced with 5 heavy pellets, dealing 23% additional damage overall and gaining plus 20% range. Heavy rounds, the perk upgrade for it says heavy round deals an additional plus 20% damage. So guys, it kind of changes the functionality of the weapon from this like tiny pellet spread to like these heavy chunky spreads. So you can see here, that is the suggested. Fraternity is great because it actually works even when you're solo. So it says when all fire team members are alive, you get plus 28% damage. Well, if you're the only member of your fire team, by definition, you are alive, you know, unless you're dead. And you're, you know, if you're dead, you're not shooting your gun anyways. Finally, Conjugation, you know, that would not apply here. However, you see what it says, this weapon deals 20% damage when it is equipped to a character of the same element. And the element is a solar weapon here. And so I will leave it at that and just know if you get this, don't necessarily auto delete it thinking, oh, I can't use it on any character. You might hold on to it. Next in perk 2, we have Karmic Reward as our recommended. That's what my suggestion is going to be. We've already talked about Reincarnation and we've talked about Eager Aspirant as well. Karmic Reward says hitting the same target 2 times in a row grants the rest of the magazine plus 60% damage bonus until the weapon is reloaded. The perk upgrade says hitting the same target twice in a row grants the rest of the magazine plus 25% rate of fire. So fire it faster and stronger as long as you can hit 2 times in a row on the same target. So guys, I'm going here. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with any of the first column perks, and then that second column, Karmic Reward all the way. And that's a very similar feel that we have for Eternal Retribution, which we've already been using on Gwen for, you know, nearly 4 or 5 months now. Let's look at some of the other options here. I know we got a new auto rifle. So let's go look at that real quick. Auto rifle here, we have the Wrongful Ingress. Wrongful Ingress is a void auto rifle. It is a 720 RPM, which is a little faster than Sworn Oath. So probably, if it's anything like Destiny 2, it probably feels a little better, to be honest. I think for some reason in Destiny 2, everything that's a little more rapid fire, 900 RPM SMGs and 720 RPM auto rifles, they just feel better. And so let's look at the traits and perks here we have for it. So we have Surrounded, which is, you know, this is a weapon that's kind of DOA in Destiny Rising. We don't spend a ton of time in the mix of a bunch of enemies, like long enough to benefit greatly from this damage boost. So I would say Ignore Surrounded. Solidarity, again, that's highly dependent on other Lightbearer kills. So those two I would just get rid of if you have that. You want Annihilation. This weapon deals increased damage based on how low the target's health is. So, you're dealing damage to the target as it's coming down. You are gaining your own damage boost to push that kill, to push the enemy over. You can see perk upgrade deals a plus 20% damage against targets with less than 33% health. So the perk upgrade's giving you even more. Next, we have the recommended is Clepsydra. Okay, grants increased damage based on the ratio of hits to precision hits made with the current magazine up to 75%. This resets when the magazine is empty. And so, guys, if you can hit your shots, which is a big if for some of us out there, but if you can hit your shots, you can get up to a 75% damage bonus. And then, again, you're going to have to continually keep that climbing. So for me, it's going to have a lot to do with how big the magazine is. If the magazine's not that big, that might not be the best option for you. So you got to ask yourself, what am I using this weapon for? Am I actually using this weapon to deal damage? Am I using this weapon to take out large enemies? Or am I using this as an ad clear? Because if you're using it as an ad clear, I would probably go with Misfortune's Confetti. So your rounds will ricochet to the nearest combatants, dealing 60% of the original shot's damage. So as you're going, they're ricocheting off. And then the perk upgrade for this says has a 15% chance to generate a second instance of shrapnel splash damage. So you can bounce off again, essentially, kind of having that between enemies as you're going. And then the final option in that column is Black Body. Final blows grant plus 7% damage, stacking 5 times, with all the stacks being cleared upon death. And so it says each stack, as a perk upgrade, each stack grants an additional 2.4% damage. So my suggestion for this is to look at this weapon and think of it in terms of the kit that you have available to you. For a character like Wolf, let's take a critical look at what the actual options are here, right? So you come in here, you can choose to use this Sereno Buse on Wolf now. And then as you do that, you now open up to the fact that you could use something like a Sweet Business if you really wanted to. You want to take a time to ramp that up, get Sweet Business going. You could use Sworn Oath if you have one that you really like in the first place. Or you can use this new one, Wrongful Ingress, and you can have access to all 3 elements now, with Wolf's Kit providing the Solar, Wrongful Ingress providing the Void, and then if you stayed on the Smart Bomb, you could provide your own arc as well. So guys, I feel like Wolf's stocks have gone up in twofold, because we got a new GL and we got a new option for the auto rifle, and both of them come in a new flavor of energy that we did not have before that. Let's look here. Here's one I remember. We have a brand new hand cannon, the Empty Fort Strategy. This is a solar precision weapon, hand cannon here. It is a 141 RPM. So all of my Destiny 2 players will know that a 140 RPM hand cannon, that is kind of the gold standard for Destiny 2. And so 140 RPM, having it 141 is kind of interesting that they pushed it up just above that. However, when we get in here, we see that we have this Empty Fort Strategy. We also received a second Mythic hand cannon we'll talk about here in just a moment. So let's look at the solar one here, Empty Fort Strategy. We have a new perk on Empty Fort Strategy, which is Bullseye Rebate. It says precision hits have a small chance to automatically reload 10% of the magazine, and precision final blows have a chance to automatically reload 40% of the magazine. Basically, they say, hey, if you can hit your shots, you're going to benefit. Next, we have Emboldening Support. Your primary weapon gains up to 45% damage as your power weapon's ammo depletes. And then the perk upgrade says the highest damage increase is granted when your power weapon has less than 50% rounds in reserves. And then finally, we have Annihilation. Again, as the target's health is going down, your damage is going up. So we've already talked about that. Eager Aspirant gives you that 40% extra damage when not firing. Misfortune's Confetti. You actually have ricochet rounds on a hand cannon here. And then finally, we have Searing Mark. Precision hits grant plus 12% precision damage for the next 5 seconds. Stacks up to 5 times. In the last round, the magazine gains up to 250% precision damage based on the number of stacks held. So I've seen some crazy numbers. I've actually not seen footage of it, but I've seen some screenshots of some of the numbers for this hand cannon with Searing Mark. I think people have just been going in on Atal and just like, just testing it out. And man, it has been insane. Just seeing what's happening. Something like an Annihilation Searing Mark, I think is a pretty clear choice here. But Bullseye Rebate is a fun perk. So it's something that I would maybe hold on to. But I think Annihilation Searing Mark is going to be the direction you want to go. And remember, we get new characters every half of the season. That's all I'll say right now. Get yourself a couple of good hand cannons of different flavors in this front half of the season. If you're looking for something to do, that's all I'll say. You can find information elsewhere if you want to. We won't talk about any sort of leaks or any sort of farmed information. So let's talk about the Parole hand cannon. This is a 120 RPM hand cannon. This one fires a little slower. You can see the DPS of this one is 1456, whereas the DPS of Empty Fort Strategy is 1195. So the slower firing weapon is harder hitting, thus does higher DPS, which is interesting because it fires slower overall. So let's talk about the perks that are available for it. So we have, again, Bullseye Rebate, we have Solidarity, and then we have a new perk, Facilitated Agreement. It says emptying your power weapons magazine grants your primary weapon 60% damage for 8 seconds. Your primary weapon gains constant 60% damage if there are no heavy ammo reserves. So if you are out of heavy, it's good to have a hand cannon with this on it because you're getting so much more. And the perk upgrade says your primary weapon deals plus 25% damage when your power weapons reserves are exhausted. So with a exotic mod activating that perk upgrade, you will get even more from that side. Perk 2 here, we have Black Body, which we've talked about. The final blows stacking up to 35%, and then that will be cleared upon death. Glutton, final blows made with this weapon grant it plus 2.5% damage bonus, stacks up to 15 times. Lasts until the current stage is cleared, and so the stack limit will be increased by 4 with the perk upgrade for that. Finally, Syncopation, every 4th round fired deals 280% damage. And then powerful rounds are guaranteed to deal precision damage with the upgraded for Syncopation there. So I think I'm probably going to just take the recommended here, Facilitated Agreement and Syncopation, and just call it a day. I think that is a great option for you as well. The last thing I think we got was a rocket launcher, a new rocket launcher for Ikora. We received the 4-horned ram arc rocket launcher, an RPM of 80 here, and traits. We have Sympathetic Arsenal, which just is dead on arrival. This is kind of a joke perk inside of Destiny 2. I have no idea why they brought this over here. Reloading within 5 seconds after a final blow also reloads stowed weapons. So you have to get a kill with the rocket, then reload just to auto reload your first slot weapon. It's unnecessary. Then we have Vorpal Weapon. Deals 30 plus 32% damage against bosses, powerful combatants, and light bearers in their super. And then finally, we have here auto-loading holster. I've said this many times before I even realized this was on the weapon. Auto-loading holster all the way. First column, throw auto-loading on there. You will not be disappointed. In the next slot, we have Eager Aspirant. Again, that plays really well with auto-loading holster. Cluster Bomb, when the rocket detonates, they unleash 8 cluster bombs that deal 6% of the main rocket's damage. And then you see here the perk upgrade for this, the cluster bombs will gain tracking capabilities. So those little tracking bombs will not miss by chance, right? Like they won't just go off to the left or the right. They will hit the enemy. Then finally, you have Polyploidy. Again, we talked about this before. Honestly, I would be happy with anything in the second column. If you're having trouble getting one in particular, try the others. If you get an exotic mod for one of the 3 in the second column, I probably would go Polyploidy, Cluster Bomb, and then Eager Aspirant personally, but any of the 3 are options for you, especially if you're trying to boost your power up with Ikora. You know, if we potentially get a second rocket wielding, legend, something maybe that matches up with an arc rocket wielding character, you know, you could have that could play very interestingly in with some of the things you could do in the artifact, and then you could do with the GL in the front slot here as well. But for me personally, I'm going to take this with auto loading, the 4-horned ram, and then I'm going to take the Vergar's drill. I'm trying to max this out as fast as possible and be able to do that as well. So let me go here real quick. Let me go and check out the Gauntlet Blitz rewards here just to make sure I've not missed anything. So we have here from Assembly Plant, we have the Void GL, and then we have the Parole Void hand cannon. From Overflow, we have the 4-horned ram rocket launcher, and that's where we also have the empty fort strategy. And finally, from the Eyes Have Walls, we have the Thermopylae shotgun, solar shotgun, and then we have the Wrongful Ingress auto rifle. So if you say, Sax, what would you prefer? So we've already talked about, I think you should go get the GL first. Let's say you get the GL, you're out of the way. What would I prefer to go after that? I personally would suggest going after the Walls Have Eyes so that you can get the God roll shotgun and you can get the God roll of the auto rifle. And then I would move into Overflow. Get into Overflow, get in here, get the hand cannon first. That's what you want to prioritize. And then we're going to move over to the rocket launcher. So top to bottom, if you are decrypting your engrams for the 6 weapons that came out in Season of the Moor, here is the order of operations for me. I'm going Heavy GL, the Void Heavy GL first. Then I am going with the shotgun, the solar shotgun. Then I'm going to go with the solar hand cannon, the empty fort strategy solar hand cannon. Then I'm going to go with the Void auto rifle. Finally, you can make a choice either between if you want the Void hand cannon or the rocket launcher. I would probably lean Void hand cannon, then rocket launcher. So I think that's the order of operations I would go with, top to bottom. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in for this week's episode. Thanks for letting me yap. Hopefully you can see that over a full season of the show, I have grown in my information. I've grown in my understanding. I have found a way to be able to articulate different things with Destiny Rising. I do love this game. I hope that comes through loud and clear. And even though we're taking a little break here, I hope that does not deter you from loving the game, from joining my community. If you need a pack to play with, if you need people to hang out with, I still intend to play every week. We get together on Sunday nights and we do our pack hunts. You are more than welcome to come join us. Again, I'll flash them on screen. If you want to join me, you want to add me as a friend, I'm happy to. If you want to tune into my live streams, if you ever see me live stream in Destiny Rising, come play with me. We'll hang out. We'll talk all things Destiny Rising. Until next time, be blessed, y'all.